he said. I'm a man then.
Oh, you just did. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Good evening and welcome to this meeting of Woodley Town Council's Strategy and Resources Committee being held on the 23rd of January 2024. Woodley Town Council meetings are now recorded, with recordings streamed live and stored on the Town Council's YouTube channel. By virtue of attending the meeting, you consent to having your image and audio recorded for this purpose. If you do not wish for your image and audio to be recorded, then please do not stay for the meeting. For those in attendance, we're not expecting a fire drill tonight, so if you hear the fire alarm, please head to the nearest fire exit and congregate at the fire assembly point by the open centre at the front of the Woodford Park. Thank you. Let's move to the agenda. Any apologies?
Yes, we have apologies from councillors Anderson, Nagra and Rowland.
Okay. Any declarations of interest? Looking around. No. Minutes of the meeting held on 21st of November 2023. To approve the minutes on that date, and can I sign them by the chairman as correct? Those in favour, please show. Okay, I'll do that after the meeting. Item 4, actions and follow-ups on page 7. Yes, Max, are you going to cover this, please?
Yeah, I think everything is as stated in the document. But there has been an update on CCTV, which was minute 8 from the meeting on the 30th of June.
Yep, I can add something in there. The town centre manager has been working on it and has pulled together some quotes for a scheme in the town centre, and is setting up a meeting with stakeholders, which all councillors will be invited to hear from the companies that he's been speaking to about that, to have a look at the proposals. Subsequently, from that, we'll have a report coming to this committee to the next meeting is the plan. The only thing other action I was going to mention on there was there was a question last time about whether payments should be to note rather than to approve, on the basis they've already been approved by authorised signatories. And I've just confirmed that with the internal auditor, so they will be presented as to note from here on in as they are in this bit.
Okay, I'll give you an update on minute 42 at the top of the list. Just before Christmas, the working borough officer relevant to the link with the youth council contacted me for more information. I did provide it, and they were going to pass it on to the youth council. But to date, I've heard nothing, but I will chase it up.
I think I heard you mention in a meeting that they'd come back and said, well, perhaps rather than them come to council meetings, a councillor attended their meeting.
I haven't heard that. I don't know where you picked that up.
Yes, I heard that also at the Borough Council. It was, wasn't
Yeah, I think it was at full council.
it? It might have been at Children's Services.
I would know that.
No.
Okay. Which is disappointing because the officer I'm liaising with, I would expect them to come back to me, but I'll.
It's badly to you, yes.
And they did not. So that's useful information. I'll go back to them, based on that information and chase it up. It doesn't sound as though it's probably likely to happen, unfortunately. But we tried. We have tried. That's all. Any other comment? Oh, sorry.
It's just a question. Minute 52 action. Just to say that it says proportion of plots. It doesn't say proportion of allotment plots, so you just need to guess that. But the other thing is, it says complete. So what does that mean? Sent 248 out of 334.
Out of the 334 plots, 248 are Woodley residents, which is the question.
Oh, does it mean sent? Sort of semicolon.
Oh yes, so that information has been sent out.
Right. Okay.
So
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Although it's not actually on the actions which have been presented to us tonight, I have a sneaky feeling there was a matter concerning the business improvement district, which I'm sure came to this committee, and we were told that the matter was progressing. I just wondered, Kevin, do you have any?
I do,
updates?
yeah. I had a meeting with the town centre manager yesterday, and we basically he's seeking some more advice and trying to set up this first kind of stakeholder meeting.
Yes.
But I know he was going back to the people who did the original presentation to council and to stakeholders before that happens. So it's still in that stage at the moment, that early stage, but he is good.
Thank you.
I can give you a further update as well, because I was at the town centre management meeting where this was raised again, and it is work in progress, with being driven by Mark Ashford and obviously our town centre manager. They have done some preparatory work, and the preparatory work is sort of indicating that we don't have a large enough rateable value estate to, even if you include virtually every business that's in Woodley, to make it viable. So Brian was just basically setting the scene, but we are still, the TCMP, still progressing it to see. But the consultant who gave us a very good presentation basically sort of said, if what you can raise is below this minimum level, it probably won't work. But what do you think, guys?
Could I ask about 43A, where the role of caretaker at Coronation Hall is reinstated? Is that having a negative impact?
It is. It's a situation we've had for quite a while. We've been sustaining it, and it is having an impact in how we manage shifts and things for the staff in this centre. So we're having a bit of a push on it. We're re-advertising again from this week, and we've also got a standard job fair here on Thursday to try and get that.
But it hasn't prevented any bookings?
No, not at all. It's just it goes overtime basically for the staff managing this building, and it's more difficult for them to do in terms of hours.
That's good to hear. I know the Early Present Centre, their caretaker's ill, and they've been having to cancel bookings because of that. So that's what sprung to mind. Thank you.
Any others? Okay. Agenda item 5, finance. 5A budget control page 10.
Yeah, thank you. So just to note, at this point in the year, which is month 9, we'll be looking at the figure you can see there, which is 75% in terms of expenditure and income, albeit evened out across the year. You can see an expenditure there on page 10, as reported last time, staff costs and software licenses, a little over all other costs where we'd expect them to be in the year, and below 75% with no significant anticipated expenditure in the remainder of the year. Excuse me, over the page income on page 11, and again, similar to as reported to the last meeting, strong income at the Oakwood Centre and interest received on the council's deposit account monies and those funds invested in the CCLA, which has got that on the right side of 75 as well. And a lot of that is that interest and the Oakwood Centre performance.
Any questions? No? Okay, so it's just to receive, we don't need to vote on that. And B, the payments on page 12. Any questions? Robert?
It's a statement more than a question, just to show the due diligence of council. I have been Googling all weekend to see how much a ton of topsoil is, and yes, it is that expensive. Do we actually, how regularly do we check that we're getting the best value for our products that we're buying from whichever supplier we're buying them from.
Yeah, so something like that, for example, we would essentially Google search, probably do exactly what you did, find the cheapest one and go with that. We do find the cheapest deal we can get, things like that. Things that are a bit more regular, we have to test differently. So we're doing it something at the moment in terms of stationery, for example, where we've got a more regular supplier for something and it just needs testing sometimes, so we should level this how we get it. But with other things, we get the best deal we can get. Excellent, thank you.
Just noticed that for some reason, the HMRC bill in,
What page are you on?
I beg your pardon, page 12, HMRC bill is 29,000 odd, whereas on page 14, it's only 20,000 odd, sort of. What would cause quite a variation like that?
It's mainly the PAYE and national insurance.
Oh, well, do they vary? I'm not.
Depends on what backdated pay. If there's somebody's been promoted and so that has an impact on what you pay.
Right, I see. Oh,
There'll be some variation in.
There will be, but it's mainly on PAYE and national insurance.
I mean, do you think there's quite a change at my work in the pay bill around this time? I've just wondered, was the pay bill, did it go through a sort of step change of some sort?
There was a national pay award,
Yes.
which had a back pay element to it, which was referring to, so that there's a kind of
Yeah.
an extra calculation.
Right.
to be done from it.
No, that's it.
I've got one. Right at the top, on page 12, after grazing limited, replace last, nearly £1,000. Can you say a little bit more about that? Damaged by somebody or?
Yeah, it's one of the glazing ones here.
Did we claim that insurance or it probably wasn't?
Don't
worth it?
know.
Yeah.
Excess.
Yeah, but it's a bit debatable with the excess as to whether something
What
was
is our
100,000 is worth it.
What is our excess?
I can't remember.
Okay.
I'll have to check. We haven't made a claim in respect to that one.
That's fine. Michael?
Thank you, Chairman. Could Kevin comment on the fact we have 4 energy providers? Ecotricity, EDF, Positive and SSE. I just wondered whether there would be a better deal to be had if we had one supplier for all of our premises.
Yeah. What we do, we use a broker, we use a company called actually LSI, who do a lot of local council.
Based in St Albans. Yeah, I know.
Basically, go to them every year with all of the accounts, and they do an assessment on that. Sometimes it's not the best deal, depending on which building with a single supplier.
Got it.
Some of the anomalies on there are things in the town centre, so the toilet and the clock and things, which are slightly odd.
EDF is the clock.
Yeah, or unmetered supplies on lighting.
SSE.
Which is SSE one, as opposed to the building ones, which is Ecotricity and Positive Energy for the gas and electricity for the buildings. So we do check that, and we go with the best deal we can get on the buildings. They always give us at least 3 comparable options for the building.
Yes. Okay, shall we move on to note, the PSDF funds, item C, page 16.
Yeah, well, it's fairly self-evident that we're doing well with both investments. At the moment, as you can see, so far to date, in December the 31st, we've had so far 75,000, but from when we initially had the loan or the deposit investment made, we've made 114,000 so far on the public work loan board, which will pay off the Oakwood Centre costs of, and then the second one, as you can see, is again, although it's less than half, it's sort of 41,000 to date, but with from initially starting, we've got 64,000, so it's doing very well. And you can see sort of percentage wise, from the initial investment of 2 million or 1.83, it's sort of just under 6%.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. To note, we now move on to item 6. To note, bookings and room hires, page 17. Kevin?
Yeah, thank you. So you'll see the charts that you're used to seeing on pages 17 and 18 for a percent room hire and the catering income. So just to note, the room hire income's tracking well above budget, showing us that steady return that we were hoping for to the pre-COVID level of 2019-20, which you can see there in the blue line. So the preceding years, it dropped right down to that orange line, pulled its way up to the yellow, then the green. So it's almost back up where it should be, which is encouraging. Catering is more steady. You can see that's tracking almost exactly on budget and not dissimilar to last year. So I think that that's an indicator of actually just a very steady business there. So yeah, that's all on the right side of where we want to go.
Any questions, comments? Okay. Right. Done both of those. Now we come on to the risk management subcommittee, which is the large. The risk management subcommittee met on the 3rd of January, and their report is on page 19, which is summary report from Kevin, I guess, is 19. Don't know if anybody wants to delve into it. We've got Robert here.
Yeah, let's go just as an intro. We went through this, we had this on a Zoom meeting, we went through this. Hope everyone's had a good read through it. It's a hefty old tool. I suggested to the committee that they all get asked a printout to go through, because it is quite cumbersome to look at it onto a screen. Every single square we've gone through, and we discussed it all absolutely thoroughly. So I hope you've all had a good old read of it. We went through the terms of reference to the committee, the subcommittee, and also through the strategy and disaster recovery plans. If anyone's got any questions, I'm happy to answer them or defer.
So on the subject of the risk register, a general comment is that under actions comment, there isn't generally a date, and I think it would be useful, because I mean, obviously you can see that the blue text is new, but otherwise it might be hard to judge when it really happened, sort of thing. So I would like to make that comment that it would be useful to have a date. Then for example, now strategic register SR14. I don't know what that's a page number. It says update marketing plans and venues.
Yep.
When did that happen? When will it happen?
But the committee go through all the points from the last time they met, and we discuss any changes that need to be done, and they're put on there. So these actually won't be reviewed by the subcommittee until they meet again next year. So there isn't actually a time and date limited on these. Kevin, is there any value to putting a date on? I can't see there being a value to doing that.
I think because, as you said, the document itself is reviewed annually. That's stated on the front. In terms of the action that's on there, it would be reviewed on a year. It doesn't mean we wouldn't do anything with those things in the year.
Well, I think if that's the case, then would it be possible to say on the front renewed annually?
Yeah.
Then at least you know it's within a year, don't you?
Yeah.
So, on the subject of this marketing plan for the venues,
What number you on, sorry again?
so this is strategic register,
Yeah,
SR 14.
Yeah.
Sorry?
It's about page 5, I know there are pages here about it.
It's in like green.
Oh, yeah, it's already. So, sorry, is this an intention to update the marketing plan? Or is it something that's already happened?
this is now ongoing. So everything that was on there has been done. And then these now are new ones that are going forward.
So the blue text is new, it's what's being acted on, or is it being done during 2024?
Yes,
Right, okay.
from now forward.
Because on, in like the top, the risk of at the bottom, serious injury or death. In blue, in the
Yes.
comments column, it says revised first aid training programme for 2022. Well, that's 2 years ago, so I didn't.
When's that, Alison? Sorry, is that-
So that's the page before, page SR 07, bottom right-hand column.
SR07, that's the best.
Revised first aid training programme for 2022. So we discussed this and everybody that needed to has been done up to date, haven't they, Kevin?
Yeah, that's an error, that should have been updated, thank you.
The other
Thanks,
comment I make,
I've got some more, all right, go on. I wonder whether it was relevant to operational register allotments, which is a sort of yellowy green banner at the top.
Is there a number?
Well, I did do that before. It's A09. That's the top one, that's on the second page for allotment.
Yes. Can we have page numbers on these going forward, please? Got it, Anne, got it.
Can you point to where in the risk register, the lack of page numbers?
It's great though, because this is the whole point about this. I mean, it's a really serious document. And it doesn't need lip service. It does need real scrutiny. So it's great. That's fine. I've got you, Anne. I'm with you.
I wondered whether it was relevant to that risk, that it's planned to ban bonfires on the allotments, isn't it?
Yes. Yes, there are plans.
Right, okay.
Anything else you
I
want?
appreciate it's not, that's not the reason, but anyway, I'm trying to affect that risk.
Okay. Anything else?
Oh, well, now, purple banner, municipal buildings, and it's risk, MB04,
Yep, got it.
inadequate budget provision. There is now a list of capital budgets, isn't there? Is that the right word for it? I was just
A
thinking,
list of capital budgets.
which is new since the last audit or something like that, isn't it?
Sort of, so we, in the proposed budget, there are some changes to specific funds. But there's no, we're managing it better than we were then, but not enough to reduce the risk.
Oh, right, okay, that's what I was wondering. Oh, right, okay, right. Yes, I'm going to do it right, okay, oh, yes, so, operational register open spaces, so that's a deep pink banner.
Yep.
Item OS06.
Yep.
Has there been any decision on additional security measures across all sites?
So I can update the amenities manager is going to be installing some collapsible bollard at key locations around the gates, specifically in Woodford Park, which will go some way. And we're still assessing some of the other stuff that they work around and replace the timber fencing, which will be going through the year.
Okay, thank you.
So I just,
Yes,
if somebody wants to encroach, you could put barbed wire, mines, etc. They will get through. You just try and make it harder for them to get through,
Well,
and they'll go somewhere else.
I think.
Just for information.
I think they wouldn't want to damage their vehicles.
Well,
So,
they take them away, whatever your security thing is, they'll dig it up and go on and sell it.
so, And then my last one is operational register resource management. So that's the very last page, green banner,
Yep.
item RM21.
Yes.
The council will be using HR management software to maintain staff records, blah, blah, blah. Is that happening now?
Not yet, we're looking at it to get that in place.
Oh, right.
It's, not as good as it could be.
Oh, right, okay. So that's something that you will conclude on in 2024?
Yes, so we've got something put in place since last time, which is much, much better.
All right.
But we are looking at the potential for a system which will pull all of that together and training and things.
Oh, right.
Central system.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Any other next questions?
Sorry, Alison.
I just want to give a comment, it was a purple bit, I think that's where I mostly noticed it. Is that sometimes the last line in the controls in place
Yeah.
is missing. So we weren't able to
Yeah,
read it.
there's two there. Yeah.
Yeah, 05
And 11.
and 15.
Just a point of clarification, operational register resource management, first page, RM09, bottom of that page. It talks about serious breach of IT security. I mean, cyber attacks are now quite common in big industries. Is that covered there? That
Yeah, so our current IT provider took part actually in a government trial, very specifically for local government cybersecurity, to make sure that the systems behind our systems were adequate in doing that. It was good for him as well, that actually it gives him another notch and something that he can use in his business. But we took part in that trial, that was 2 years ago. We do check that every year to make sure that is as it should be. And we've done a lot of work, Matthew's done a lot of work specifically with the website this time around, which has covered a lot of things to do with security of the website as well as accessibility and all those things.
great, thank you, Chairman.
Okay, just before I move on, we've got 3 votes. Before I go for the votes, can we record our thanks to Councillor Forstine, Bella and Bragg in doing what it is a thankless task. Nobody wants to do it. It is incredibly, I was going to say boring, but incredibly interesting.
It is interesting.
It just appeals to a minimum number of people. So, can I say thank you to all 3 of you for doing, as you pointed out, Robert, a very, very important.
I think it's my 9th or 10th year on this committee. It's a long time, but
You don't get time off for this.
It's just, I have one or two questions about the disaster recovery
Oh,
plan.
sorry, please don't.
So one is on page 30, under objectives, it's supposed to be using IT manual and the IT risk assessment. Where are they?
Not in here.
No.
So there is a risk assessment for both of those.
So it's the first page of the disaster recovery plan. Also, I've got a couple of things really. One is that on page 32, the personal contact info, quite a lot's been redacted, and it just strikes me that there isn't really any contact info here for making contact outside office hours.
Yeah, so this is the public documents. They've got certain personal numbers redacted, which the staff as an operational document are individual.
Yes, something like that. So it says that you keep a paper copy locked in the office or something. Would that have the personal info, contact info in it?
Yeah.
Ah, right. Okay. Thank you. And then the other thing is on the list of possible disasters. Oh, there is a. Sorry, where is it? I felt it wasn't. I felt that the disaster of an IT hack wasn't really mentioned very specifically. Where Where's the list of disasters? Oh, here we are. Emergency, so it's, sorry, page 42, item 2.1. So this is the list of triggering events. Communications, loss of power, flooding of the premises, loss of the building, but it doesn't mention a computer hack there.
Now on page 50.
Not, I mean, it might happen again, but at the top of page.
Oh, that's 48, isn't it? Loss of use access to council offices. IT requirements are listed on there.
Yes, so that's not quite the same thing though as a computer hack. Because actually, I mean, it would have different effects, wouldn't it? You might well have access to the office, but you might find that all your personnel data has got pinched or something.
Yeah, we haven't got a specific reference to it, have we, Kevin?
No, I can add that.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah, we could have the box, couldn't we?
Yeah.
Thank you, Anne.
Oh, and actually another thing, but this is, I'm sure this is covered. Do you have a designated sort of computer system manager on site?
Not on site.
We all look at Matthew, don't we?
Yes.
Yeah, somebody who knows how, our IT support is
Oh.
site.
So I mean, I was just wondering who comes and checks that the UPS is actually running?
Our contractor,
Do they come in?
he comes in quite frequently, yeah.
Oh, does he?
Yeah, and it's very useful for us. When we're doing it.
Yes. Oh, I see them actually in the checklist or something.
Yeah, and he can kind of monitor everything remotely as well, that's happening. So our whole IT network and our email server and everything. He can.
Is that Darren Charles?
Yes.
Oh, that's very good. Sometimes you just need to look at what's in the computer room as well, don't you? So that's, anyway, sounds good. I just think that might be it for me. Yeah, I'm sure that's it. That was the thing I was concerned about, really.
That's helpful.
Thank you.
So now we need to, there's 3 items that we need to vote on. Let's take them all 3 together. Is that okay with everyone? Okay. So there's an item on number 5 on page 19, number 6 and number 7. All those in favour, please show. All those against? Not those.
Would you like these copies back for when it goes to full council?
You're more than welcome to keep them. I will renumber them. And for full council, we only present the summary pages.
Oh, right,
There was a
okay,
comment a
right.
couple of years ago that actually the full document for full council, they didn't want to see that much.
No, the thing is, it's not cheap to do so that you can have do it.
Okay, so we move on to item 8. The investment subcommittee, page 52. Okay.
Yes, thank you. Just to note the report down on page 52, which contains 2 recommendations. The recommendations are, one is in relation to the VAT funds that used for HMRC, and there's a request there to place 110,000 of the 133,690 we receive into the CCLA funds. We don't need them for operating purposes at the moment, so that's just a request for approval to do that. And the second one is to approve the Treasury Management Strategy, which is an audit requirement for full council to approve that each year. So the recommendation there is for that to be approved for presentation to full council. The risk management strategy itself hasn't changed massively since last year. There's a lot of older information relating to the COVID period, which has been taken out, and obviously it's now been updated to include reference to the CCLA funds.
You mean the Treasury Management?
Sorry, Treasury Management Strategy. Sorry, I know because I was looking at it. Sorry, Treasury Management Strategy. And now includes information on the loans, on the CCLA funds, and also there was a section added in request of the committee, just a bit of explanation about the town council's bank accounts, what we have and what their function is in the different plans.
Any questions?
I just wondered, as regards the VAT refund, how are you handling refunds requests for refunds coming in from customers?
Main one we are refunding are really the people that we invoiced for activities, sports activity. Whereas the gym, unfortunately, can't say that.
No. So,
Sorry. Yeah.
so I'm just wondering, so do people need to sort of actively apply for one thing?
No, we're gonna get the account details from the people that paid by invoice, and then once we've had that, we will reimburse everybody that overpaid.
And will that come out of this 110,000? Will it come out of the little bit that's not?
It will come out of that 133 that we had got.
Right.
Because the 110 is actually going into an investment that will earn us some more interest on it.
So the 133 goes into an earmarked reserve.
Right.
For accounting purposes. The physical money, 110 of it's just been put into that account where it will just earn more
Right.
interest.
Oh, okay.
So
Right.
the two aren't particularly linked, but the money will be down from the earmarked reserve to reinvest.
Oh, right. Okay. Okay.
And to be absolutely clear,
Yes.
individuals who've gone and used facilities within the leisure centre, there is no track
No.
for those individuals, so there is no way of confirming one way or another if somebody tried to apply.
Oh, right. Okay.
So it's only going to be the people we're giving the refund to, only the people who booked, usually typically block booked and have an invoice, because you've got that record.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I just wondered because that refund element isn't specifically mentioned here. I just make sure it's still there. Thank you.
And can I say, we had a working borough council meeting on Thursday, and it was quite interesting that the executive member for leisure said that they haven't been able to apply
No way.
for the HMRC grant, because the government had only just sorted it out. But we know that it's not quite true. But they did say they're going to be sort of spending some time to work it through. Because there was somebody who asked the question from a football club, saying, when can we get our back? Anyway, that's just,
You did it all 3 months ago.
yeah,
Yes.
so. it
We
just
were
shows
very
we
lucky.
have-
We had a person at HMRC that worked, sorry, our contacts.
I think we're very lucky to have you, Cliff.
No.
It just shows that we actually have top class officers in this place. Right, so there's no more questions. Again, if everybody's okay, can I take the two recommendations together or?
Yeah.
One of those questions. All those in favour, please show. All, everyone? Okay, thank you very much. Item 9, Youth Support Service Task and Finish Group. Okay, saying that I did watch there's no page associated with this. This is just a. Yes, please. Well, there is.
There was a recommendation from this task finish working group meeting that was held on the 20th of December. The parent committee is leisure services, but the budget holders for are obviously Stratton Resources, so they felt that it was important to make both Stratton Resources and leisure services aware of the date that they feel they will complete their activities. And obviously the aim is, because there has been obviously quite a lot of discussion about this, it's very important to the whole of the council. It was important to make sure that this was formally noted, because there was originally, and I think it's in the actions and follow-up, the initial task that was presented, I think, from Stratton Resources was for leisure services to revisit this and resolve it by November 2023. But obviously, the activities of the working group that are working well at the moment realise that in terms of getting all the information they need to make a reasoned judgment on how the council should move forward, it's going to take them until the end of this year, so until November 2024. So the hope is that at that point they will say this is the approach we should take going forward, and that will be able to kick off. But they want obviously
It's a date thing.
slightly different. Obviously, it's with the pressure that because Strategy Resources had put a deadline for Leisure Services to do it by November 2023, it was kind of important to update you all as to the fact that it's going to be longer than that.
So do we have to, if the recommendation, do we have to use the word recommendation? That implies a vote.
The recommendation was also made to Leisure Services. So the Strategy Resources, sorry, basically, as it says, the working group made a solid recommendation to note. They have recommended you note that.
Right, fine, we have. You got that? Noted. So item 10, project schedule, page 62.
So that's just the list of capital programme projects which were approved earlier in the year. They're all in hand. Some of those weather dependent will be continuing through the year. Crucial ones being the private centre heating system, which is scheduled to begin next month or to be completed next month. And the Open Centre toilets one, which moved on since the last meeting, and the contractor has been appointed. We went through the detail of sort of fit and finish today with officers, so that's well underway and scheduled for summer. That will involve an amount of disruption within the centre, because it's the quietest period within the centre. We've worked that around bookings so that it doesn't affect any larger bookings. We don't have any during that period. We're accommodating all the other smaller bookings within the centre, and we will have a pleasant mobile toilet unit for use during that period that the toilets are out of action.
Will it be multicoloured? That's what I'd say before something else.
Very good.
Any movement on the TDCs at all?
What about the centre toilets? So will they have, sorry, I'm so sorry, I forgot the correct wording for it. But will the toilets be suitable for people with disabilities who need changing, you know?
Yes.
That's the top standard of it, that there's very little of
Yeah.
in the area. Will we have that?
So yes, both the gents and the ladies' toilets will have what's called an ambulant toilet, which is just a much larger space. Both have baby changing, as will the disabled.
With the adult size changing table, if that's what you call it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, yes, I've seen one. There's one at Willowbank School,
Yeah, I
and
mean,
they
that's
have
what
a
we really want to.
full-size bed, and they have a shower in there as well for anyone that soils themselves.
Does not have that. The space that we've got available.
Yeah, we were looking at that at the leisure centre. We were talking about that, to put one in the leisure centre, and that was if that gets refurbished, because it's a huge space. It take up the whole size of gents' toilets here, something like that. They're very big. But we have got it on the, we were looking at on the leisure centre working group.
It's to have one in Woodley. that
Yeah,
would be-
yeah, there's, I can't think of where the nearest one is. Willowbank School.
How about the library?
Library.
No, that doesn't have a,
Doesn't have the full adult one.
and they're large toilets, but we don't have a.
That's a shame, because they're not that old. Anyway.
I've got a question, having had an answer to something as well. Are there too many to be confirmed on here? Should we not actually have some more dates in expected completion? For example, the water refill station at Woodford Park Leisure Centre.
So that at the moment we're slightly hindered, and the amenities team are a little behind. They're man down. They're trying to recruit, and Colin, the amenities manager, is working through some more essential works with fire safety and things that are working through the buildings. So they're just a bit flat out. What they have done is prioritise the major impacting works, obviously things like the heating system, etc. So some of those other ones we are getting to, but I can't stay out for those.
Thank you.
Questions, comments? To know. On to item 11. Page 63.
Oh, right, yes.
So was it just this fundamental part we need to vote on? Yeah. Just to fill people in, the reason why it's didn't come through in the normal process time-wise is that basically forgot. And they do such good work. And so I guess we maybe need to do attitude.
Yes, so we were looking at some alternative ways of doing it. We did discuss whether there were ways we could purchase items for them in that way, but ultimately they decided they prefer to put in a grant application. If the council was happy to kind of outside of the normal meeting.
Okay, so we just need to.
Sorry. It does say there is £0 left in the budget, so where would it come from?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. This was we had a misstated amount in the previous budget year, which was more than the 3,000. So the 3,000 expenses would be an extra allocation of £250 if that's what we council.
And person then Robert.
Yeah, I was just going to say, at the bottom of page 64, it does say the council will not award community grants in excess of the annual budget. I was just thinking, is there a way of stating that this is an exception?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, okay.
In fact, I think the new going forward is 350.
Yeah.
Should increase it last time. So
That's what I was going to say. Can we make this 350, please?
what's the committee think?
Because all the others are 350.
Yeah.
There's parity.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, just give up. My only comment was there were a few community grants for the same year that were approved back in April that were 250 level.
But that was before we discussed it at the last meeting to make it 350. So that was when the line was changed at the last meeting. This was missed from the last meeting, so it should be increased.
All those in favour, please show that includes the 350. Right. Item 13. Are we getting to the meat now? Charge of 2024-25. This is
Yeah, so there's a charges appendix document. That document contains the charges for items coming under leisure services. So there's a recommendation from leisure services for this this committee to approve those, and also the charges for the Oakwood Centre. Charges for the Oakwood Centre proposed on the basis of an 8.9% increase on the standard rate, with all other rates that are calculated as a percentage discount from that standard rate. That was something that was introduced by this committee last year to just make that much simpler rather than adding percentage increases to separate rates, of which there were quite a lot. The Leisure Services Committee adopted a similar approach with charging in this year, again, just to regularise that approach across the council services, with the exception of the leisure centre charges, which the Leisure Services Manager assesses and proposes on the basis of individual activities. It's kind of twofold. One, they take a lot of cash and the numbers. It's really helpful if their monetary value is something that's easy to actually manage. But also because it does comparisons with services elsewhere, there's a slightly different element to those. The 8.9% represents the September RPI figure, which provides a sort of mid-year yardstick for where things are going. And that's the rate that we use for allotment rent changes every year as well. So there's some just some consistency there, which is also in keeping with increased costs, etc., across the across the services.
Sorry, did you say 8.9% was the inflation in September?
Not the inflation, the RPI.
Oh, RPI.
raising.
So you use RPI, not CPI?
Yeah.
Okay, I was going to ask. Okay, right, thank you.
Last year, probably in March, I think, I was on the Leisure Services Committee. The members agreed that then go forward, the committee would look at considering charging rates for people, for example, fiscal benefits, so that we were, enabling residents on low incomes to have more access. Because I think, do we have a reduced rate for older people?
Are you talking about using facilities on the rooms,
Charges, well, we've been for sports, I suppose, more, because we've got this,
facilities, so
yeah. I don't know if they set up a group to look at it, or if anything happened with that.
would be down to the leisure services. Wouldn't it?
It would, yes, yeah. I mean, that's something that would be.
But it was limited in,
I know it definitely wasn't picked up during this year. I know that. I haven't had it at any meetings to look
I
at.
think there was something where, people over 65 got a reduction. I think we're all quite aware that we've got lots of residents who are over 65 who are certainly not low income, whereas we have residents, who are struggling and would find it difficult to access sports activities, which we'd all like to enable. So it was something that we're going to look at.
Could we put on the agenda for a leisure services meeting
Well, I don't know if we can.
for discussion?
Yes, but it misses the budget setting.
Yeah.
And in a way, because of the complexities of the VAT ruling, it's just adding another. I have empathy with what we're trying to achieve, but it's so complex.
We agreed it should be looked at.
We haven't, we haven't looked at it, but I don't think we can agree anything now because it's such a complex. How would you decide who qualified, what measurement would you use?
Do we do the over sixties then or whatever?
Healthy Habits has a under 18 and a 60+ rate,
Ah, right.
but there aren't any other charging reductions other than those who are Healthy Habits members and those who are non.
So that could
So
be,
perhaps that's what it was, that when applying for healthy habits.
Yes.
That would be
It
obvious.
could be
Yeah.
do it there.
yeah, I think that's what we wanted to do.
So leisure services will have to review it.
Yeah,
Okay. Just please remember, you'll need to, how are you going to check
fund it.
it,
yeah,
validate it,
yeah.
etc. And it will then have to come back here for the stretching resources to.
Well, that's going to take a year, isn't it?
Well,
for the-
depends on
Yes,
how
it
quick.
do take time.
For all the budgets and things, won't it? Yeah, yeah. So it won't be a quick
But
answer.
it could be an emergency,
Hmm.
something,
Yeah.
There are mechanisms of getting around.
Hmm.
But it's going to take probably at least 6 months.
Yeah.
Over to leisure services, guys.
So, in terms of the recommendations, one is to consider the recommendation from the services that these charges here be approved. And so those are the incentives, those are the.
I think I have mentioned before, on page 4, in that things like Coronation Hall, we've got a special rate for brownies and guides. And I think last time I said, well, perhaps that should be formed organisations. But it certainly shouldn't just be for brownies and guides, which I'm afraid only allow girls to join. Whereas scouting, girls and boys.
Declaration of interest.
My scouting is not perfectly woodly,
We'll get that changed before we.
But yeah,
In fact,
I
could we
think we
actually
missed that
have,
last year as well.
should we even have it there at all?
Well, it's just cheap.
Because those sorts of
cheaper
things
rate,
tend to
isn't it?
be
Mm.
negotiated. It's just something to consider.
Well, I know from speaking earlier, that, you know, we really need to attract a lot more bookings, regular bookings to Coronation Hall. Because when you look at the income thing, we make far more profit from the smaller chapel hall than Coronation Hall. So we should have it as a uniform rate, but we should make some effort to contact district level of all our uniformed organisations and try and we can offer them, you know, if you're looking for somewhere on Wednesday evenings, you know, have a look at the
We don't have lots of slots, actually, for the evenings, but yes, I think the point is we can certainly change that and,
because that's the only hall we offer a uniform rate to have, isn't it?
Can we just do that now? Can we just make that uniform as opposed to brownies and guides? Make a decision and just do it. Yeah, isn't it?
Are brownies charities?
Yeah.
Yes,
So they've, so we've got a confliction here because
Yes.
it's a charity concession line.
Yeah.
You got brownies and guides.
It's historic.
It's a historic thing.
A separate rate, which was.
Uniformed youth organisation, but I'm pretty sure I pick this out every year.
Yeah, let's do it.
The other thing is, you don't want, well, I would have thought you'd want to give them a sudden huge increase. You just need to be careful not to do that.
No, leave them as their rate.
The figures, that's the description.
Just change
U- uniform-
uniform.
Youth organisation.
Yeah, change that.
Yeah.
Sorry, could you just give the definition again?
Uniformed youth organisation.
Oh, yeah, that's okay.
Would
Yeah.
include the ATC or.
Mind you, that would include-
Nazis, Hitler Youth.
Yeah, yeah.
No, I don't. I don't think we're going to worry about that. They're more active in Twitter.
May I remind you, that we are beginning the topic. Scorecard.
I would like to accept you, absolutely, right.
Right. Any other questions? Alan?
It's just, I just noticed, is it the case that the smaller rooms in the Action Centre are not let out in the evenings?
I don't have an evening break.
Sorry.
They are let out in the evenings, but there is a specific rate for the bigger halls after 6 p.m. So that's all it is. There's a higher rate that's charged to those the bigger premium. It's a premium rate. So for the smaller rooms, there is no premium. It's
Oh, okay.
So high out for parties and social.
Yes, because I thought I'd seen them in use, yeah.
Any other questions? Going once? Going twice? So we need to vote for A and B. All those in favour, please show. Here. Yes, everybody. All right. Revised budget, item 14, estimates 2023-24. Page 65 is the summary, so let's go to that first. Kevin, do you want to go through it?
Yes, thank you. So firstly, just so you know, you have a budget appendix document.
Oh, yeah.
And you have an updated sheet. It's basically the first 2 points of that. The figures are actually the same. It's to do with the calculation on the actual for last year. Calculating the same way as the other columns, but the actual numbers remain the same. But hopefully this is a little clearer, and Ash has added some other information on there in relation to make it easier to follow. So firstly, revised estimates for the 2023-24 budget year, this current year. Those estimates will be considered line by line by the appropriate budget manager to consider anticipated expenditure and income to the end of the year. Overall income across the Strategy and Resources Committee finance code is expected to be 68,447 higher than originally budgeted, and that's largely due, as mentioned earlier, to strong income at the Oakwood Centre and interest from the funds invested in the CCLA. Overall expenditure for S&I is expected to be 150, just over 152,000 higher than the original budget. And that's been impacted by a couple of things, one being staff costs in relation to the National Pay Award, but also takes into account within the budget the additional allocation of 140,000 this year, which this committee approved into the capital programme for those essential works, investment in the council's buildings. So that's the summary. There is a breakdown across all cost codes in the appendix there. That's the cover sheet. There is a kind of summary of where we think we'll be in the year. So that's the revised estimate for 23-24.
Any questions? Councillor Slaughter.
So on page 9, am I right in thinking that the allotments actually cost the town council quite a lot?
Yes. That's a little more at this point as well, because the lease amount that we pay to Reading Borough Council's gone up as well.
There's a huge difference between 22, 23 and...
They charged us a previous year, so we paid, instead of 2 payments, we made 3 payments in the, if you look at 11,000, unfortunately.
So it's the rent that makes it.
Yes.
Yeah. That's, yeah, it's just over £2,300 on the lease.
So going forward, do we intend to continue to all council tax payers in subsidising the allotment fares in effect?
But then all council taxpayers are subsidising the bowling club or the badminton hall.
Cricket.
Yeah.
Are they making such a?
Because I thought exactly that when I walked past it
Oh,
the other
yes,
morning, you know.
it's very comparable.
It's an amenity that's provided by the town council for the residents at a subsidised cost. Because you would have people, you know, going back to your subsidised rates for the sports facilities for the elderly, isn't it? If you don't have these subsidies available, people won't be able to benefit from it, won't be able to do it.
I think it's probably just a matter of maintaining oversight of the usage by Woodley residents, like we saw the figure for the allotment.
But because the land's owned by Reading, they have a right to have first access to it.
Well, I don't know how many of the bowling club members are Woodley residents, but I believe anyone can join.
I think the majority are Woodley residents.
Just
I know, I think you've got parity for it. Keith, just looking on this, if I may jump in while I'm waffling on. Water rates are £5,500 in budget. Why don't we spend £7,000 and put a borehole in, and they won't have to pay water rates ever again?
It's a project that the committee could add to be investigated.
It's a lot of money.
What we have been looking at, just on that, and the amenities manager has drawn up some plans and done some initial costings for water harvesting at the site, and some units which would enable us to do that. Very simple, a shed roof with no shed, basically, and a water butt in order to try and reduce the amount that we do use in the water butts. I also think there's a bit of work we could probably do in encouraging more water harvesting on plots and trying to get, whether that's, we can get some sort of deal on bulk buying water butts and guttering or whatever that might be, to try and encourage tenants to do more of that, because there's still quite a lot of plots up there that don't have to do that.
So the allotment toilet income, line 1160, was 345 in 22-23, and it's right down to 85 now. Why has that fallen so much? I don't actually understand what the toilet income is.
So spending a penny.
It's the number of tenants that are all allotments available to give out to tenants. So there's, I think the majority of that is only charged on a new tenant of £5 for the key and
for the toilet.
and the toilet.
Only at the start of the tenancy. So
Oh,
depending on-
Only at the start. So there's fewer tenants,
Fewer
fewer new tenants, sorry.
And that's because of the capacity.
Yes.
inevitably that's going to drift down.
Well, no, it's good not to have high turnover, isn't it? We want people to enjoy it for long term.
We've got quite a large, 65,
Well-
70 or something on waiting list.
62 at the moment, thereabouts. Just to note on that, what that has meant in having that charge, we've got an earmarked reserve, which I think has got just over £2,000 in it, which is a fund that's been built up from having that charge. And we're looking at, one of the projects we're looking at is to have a new toilet unit up there, which would be a green toilet self-composting unit, which would be paid for out of that, which is also.
So it's a second one. So I know that is something that the allotment holders are keen to have.
Yeah.
Could we sell the compost back to the new idea? Any other questions, comments on the section? No. Okay, we need to, two recommendations, note the content and approve the revised budget. All those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. Moving on, now we get to the next financial year. John, let's start on page 66, this is summary.
So again, each budget code has been considered line by line. Income in next year is anticipated to be around 14,000 higher than in this year for strategy and resources. Expenditure is expected to be around 75,000 higher than in this year. That expenditure does include an increased allocation to the capital programme, a proposed increased allocation of £80,000. So it's not just actual expenditure, it also takes account of allocation to earmarked reserves in terms of how you budget going forwards. Yes, so that's it really, the recommendations here to improve those budget estimates next year.
Questions, Mike?
Yes, Chairman. Okay, where do I start? On the last page of planning and community, there is an item that says annual grants. And for next year, the amounts that we're proposing total £30,000. And the amounts that we're not proposing are to first days 5,100 and 5,000 to ARC. Now, when this matter was considered by Planning and Community Committee, and although I don't sit on that committee, there was a recommendation that the Leisure Services Committee considered those grants to First Days and ARC under the Youth Services budget of 35,000, which is in the budget for 24-25. My question is, am I to assume that the First Days grant and the ARC grants and the other amounts that are shown under agenda item 16 will come out of the 35,000 in next year's budget? Because I, for one, would like grants to be considered by one committee and one committee only, because at the moment you've got a youth grant, you've got a community grant, 3,000, which is considered by this committee, and you've got the grants that are considered by the planning committee of £30,000, annual grants. Wouldn't it be simpler if one committee looked at all of the grants? We wouldn't have this problem that we've had tonight, where we were considering an application that came in late. We were arguing whether we've got enough money in the budget, and we agreed 350 over budget. It would be much simpler. So there's a couple of points I've raised there, and I'd be interested to hear the answers.
I'll answer the first bit. Those grants don't come from next year's revenue budget, that 35,000. That's completely separate. They're funded from an earmarked reserve, which has got money allocated to it specifically for that purpose. So the revenue budget for this current year was moved into an earmarked reserve specifically for those youth grants. So that's where that will come from. The 35,000 in next year's budget is there in anticipation of what youth services the council might want to get in place during the year for that. So it doesn't come out of there. So that's the first bit.
I'll answer your second question. You make a good point. When this was set up, there was a general feeling that planning community wanted to own that budget. So if the this planning community, isn't it? If they decided that they would like to go down the path that you're suggesting, personally, I'll speak on behalf of the committee here, but personally, I think we'd have no problem. But I think it needs to be thought about and discussed and recommended by the current owners of that grant process, rather than us here sort of saying, yep, we're going to do that, and ride over them. So I'm sure, Matt, you can put it on the agenda.
Because
To your point, 'cause you made it.
yeah, that's right.
I know, I watched it.
Yeah.
And you
Well,
made that.
There are three committees considering three lots of grants at the moment, and I suppose all three committees have got to consider, you know, any amalgamation of that process. Yeah, I still don't think I've been answered on the issue about what happens to the ARC grants and first days.
Okay, so
Does that get lost?
no, we've got the earmarks reserve set up now, which that will be paid from.
Earmark, where's that come from? Sorry,
So-
earmark reserve from where?
So we had money in this year in the revenue budget for youth services. As it wasn't going to be spent because we didn't have a provider, the council resolved to put that money into an earmarked reserve so that it didn't get lost at the end of the financial year.
So we've allocated those grants to those charities.
Yes.
And it's
Out-
shown,
out of that
it's shown-
budget.
and it's shown in item 16 on the agenda. What happens next year?
So depending on, we don't know what applications we would,
You see, that's my point. Because if leisure services have got a budget of 35,000 for youth services, yeah, and they want to apply it to youth services, not to grants, then the applications from ARC and First Days are going to get lost, aren't they? They're not going to get their grants because.
Mike, I can, let me cut through this, it's quite simple. At the moment, because we do not have the output of the working party, it was decided collectively that we would set up a grant system.
Yeah, I'm aware of that, Keith.
That grant system, people have applied for that grant system and they will get their money.
In this
So,
current financial year, but I'm thinking about
Yeah.
next year.
So for next year, it will all depend on the outcome of the working party. Because the grant system will stay in place until the working party has come up with what they would like to do,
You see, I'm on
and then
that.
we satisfy.
just
You see, my hands are being tied. I'm on that working party. So if that working, okay, you're on that working party. If that working party wants to allocate 35,000 specifically for youth services, we've got a big project. You know, we want to open up a youth cafe in the town. It's going to cost 30,000 plus other grants from other organisations. The money earmarked for First Days and ARC is not going to be made available from the youth services budget for next year, is it?
Just to be clear, in 24-25, which is next year,
Yeah.
that is the year that we're talking about that has been or would be funded from the earmarked reserve. It's the year after.
Yeah.
That wouldn't necessarily be.
And
Because-
the thing is, Mike, don't get hung up about which pot of money this comes out of. So if we're in the scenario that the 35,000 that's gone through the budget now is all used up, and the working party says, using your example, we want to set up a youth cafe, how do we do it? Well, that's what we've got reserves for, to cover the exceptional things, and then you undo the grant system, all right? So we're not full, we're not slushing around with money, but there's a lot of money there set aside for things, general reserves, things that we don't expect. And in your scenario, that's what would happen, it would come from general reserve. Because you're not only talking 35, and we've got 500,000-600,000 in there.
What you might have in that following year is depending on how many applications we got. Obviously that budget hasn't been set at the moment for the for that year. So we would come to that. That would be a decision for whichever body is managing those grants to assess the grants on their based on them.
Does that make sense?
It does, but if I was and this is the last time I'm going to make this. These are public documents, aren't they? If I was a director of First Days Children's Charity or ARC, I'm looking at these documents. I turn to the last page and I see First Days Children's Charity estimate for next year 0. ARC 0. I'm going to be asking the question why, aren't I?
Well, they would have got a letter.
And that's the point I'm making.
But anybody, sorry, Kelly, I know.
It's all right, don't worry.
Anyone who applies for a grant through any mechanism whatsoever
Yeah.
is informed of the outcome of their application,
Yeah.
whether they get it or they don't.
Yeah.
Right? And so you're talking about the director of First Days Charity. They wouldn't be in the dark. They wouldn't be going to this because they would have had a letter in response to their application. I'm assuming that happens.
Basically, yeah, it's far more complicated than annual grants because they go through the budget setting process. Whilst they're originally approved at planning, they don't get informed until after full council's approved the full budget.
Yeah.
The youth grant process, because it's an earmark reserve, is different. If you approve those in the other agenda item, they'll be informed tomorrow.
Okay, sorry.
I think the thing is that we had this discussion because it didn't appear that any of these groups went to the criteria that we originally wanted it to go to, because it was supposed to go to new youth products, and they were supposed to be for a specific age group, and a lot of these ones that came in were not, in my opinion anyway, in the right place. And therefore people, if it's for youth and we need it for Woodley youth, not Reading youth or Wokingham youth or everyone else, you know, I think we have to look at it more specifically to make sure that the right people are actually getting the money that we have to give.
Unfortunately, the wording of the guidelines doesn't say that.
No,
It doesn't say new projects.
but that was
It
what was
doesn't-
originally said.
The guidelines is the process that we publish, and the guidelines do not say new projects. And I caution going down that path, because if you say new projects, then you will only ever give a grant to a organisation applying once. Because in the second year of that project, it's no longer a new project. Also, if someone wanted, like, for instance, one of the ones that went through, I think it's ARC actually, they want to expand, they're already providing counselling services for the right age group in every single school. They do 2 nights a week here, or I guess it's one counselling. They want to expand that. If we didn't, that's why they applied for the grant. If we didn't give them a grant, they couldn't expand. And even worse, they could suddenly say, because everything's going up, do you know what? We can't do the evenings. And is that really the intention of that youth grant? No. I'm just asking.
Do we not give them a grant in other ways? I thought that they
But
were.
we used to give them a grant through before we had the youth grant, because we only had one grant.
Yes.
And the applications on the grant, what I call the large grant system, was double for the first time ever,
Yeah.
double. Either we have to turn around to people like Willie Bus and keep up by saying, you know, because we haven't got money, or we utilised because they were youth related, and I've actually gone through all the four in question, and in fact you can argue almost every one of them is talking about a new project in there, in the detail. But that's one side. We don't want to end up with the 35,000 sitting there because nobody's actually applied, because it's for new projects only, etc., etc. So that's what's happened. Again, it will be down to the parent company, parent committee to review those guidelines and decide exactly what they are, because it just says for facilitating and continuing or something like that. I can't remember exactly what's in those guidelines, but it's, you could argue it's woolly. And you don't identify things, guidelines which are woolly until you actually start doing it.
No.
And so therefore, what the parent committee should be doing is just reviewing that. In light of what Mike said also, reviewing, should it be just one, because we are effectively the bankers of the town council. I personally would support what Mike said, but it's got to come from that parent committee to look at, A, do we move it here? And B, do we be a bit more proscriptive on the guidelines? Does that help?
So I think just before we get to that bit, what you would probably have in, or potentially would have in 25, 26 is the same situation again when you've got money being asked for, applied for. Historically, budget, and that's what that hasn't happened before. So I think anticipating that.
Okay, any other questions?
I was going to say, can we move on? Because I think we're going to come back to this in number 16.
Right, so we're on the budget estimates 24-25, correct?
Yes.
2 recommendations: note the contents and approve the budget estimates. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. Right, budget and precept, page 67. Kevin again.
Thank you. So there's some information in the report here on page 67 for context, and what I added in here for this year was some information about reserves and the different reserves that the council has in terms of how it manages its money, just to give that bit of context to where we are. Council started the year with a large general reserve of £857,786. Through the year, the revenue budget's been managed closely, and that's in the context of the things we mentioned earlier, to increase staff costs, increased cost of materials, some uncertainty about energy prices, those sorts of things. The council has benefited in the year from a good return on funds placed in the CCLA, and also received the rebate from HMRC, which was placed into the earmarked reserve. That strong financial position of the council has enabled it to make investment decisions in the year, such as allocating an additional 140,000 into the capital programme for investment in the council's buildings, infrastructure and other essential projects. So in addition to the general reserve, which are funds available to the council and not allocated for any other specific expenditure, the council also has funded a number of earmarked reserves, which are also shown on page 2 of the budget appendix. The proposed 24-25 budget allows for an increased allocation of 80,000 to the capital programme. In respect of the buildings and facilities funds. This was something that was highlighted in the internal audit report, which commented on the fact that the council had a high general reserve, but not necessarily an adequate allocation of reserves for some specific projects, given the value of some of our assets, i.e. the buildings, and what we would have wanted to see was a bit more forward thinking, basically. The first step of that is the proposal in that budget is to allocate more money to those funds in this coming year. I would envisage that continuing. We're already looking with the public leisure sector proposals for that. We need to be building that fund for works that we want to do there. I lost my spot a little bit there. page 1 of the budget appendix, sorry, that's the new version. Sorry, the revised estimates for 23-24 anticipate that the council will move into the next financial year with a reserve of 742,000, just over. So as mentioned, that's the unallocated funds in addition to the council's earmarked reserves, which is set aside for specific spending. It is proposed on that document, if you follow it down on the blue column to the right, so that proposed column, if you follow that down to the bottom, you'll see the calculation against the precept, which is essentially you calculate the expenditure, get the income, you get to that net expenditure, which tells us what the hit will be essentially on the general reserve. And the precept obviously is counted as income then to offset that. It's proposed that the precept level for 24-25 be set at 1,164,500, which equates to a band D charge of £106.69, which is a reduction from the current year. On that basis, the anticipated general reserve at year end in 24-25 would be 517,750. And just mentioning again, that's in addition to the earmarked reserves, SIL funds and capital programme funds, which are also balances shown at the bottom of that page.
Just a couple, just for confirmation.
Yep.
I understand that the internal auditors did make a comment that we had too high a general reserve. So if you can confirm that. And secondly, that you did say, but it might have been lost, there has been effectively a movement from general reserves into earmark reserves. And a classic example is the 140,000 capital budget has moved out of the general reserves into a specific capital earmark reserve. So we've still got it, it's just moving money around, it's in different pots.
So the auditor's comment were that the general reserve was too high, more than it was high, and that what he would like to have seen was more forward thinking in terms of budgeting, and that some of those funds should show as being allocated to projects or to our assets, given the value of our assets. So essentially, the Oak Ridge Centre and the Park Leisure Centre, rather than all being sat in the general reserve, because it just shows the budgeting going on, essentially. That's good practice and very much ties into where we are with the Woodford Park Leisure Centre subcommittee looking at things for the Woodford Park Leisure Centre. We know there's going to be investment needed there, so that's also a good time to do that. In terms of in the year, you're absolutely right. So that hit, so to speak, on the general reserve is not just expenditure, it is about additional funds that have been moved into earmarked reserves. One of those being the capital programme and the buildings and facilities funds. So, for example, this year we had 45,000 already. We've got another 140,000 in, which is 80 in next year in this proposed budget instead of the 45, which have been the historic amount, so that those funds are more targeted and ready to be spent on projects rather than just sitting in the general reserve. One of the things we did do, this committee approved earlier in the year as well, was a tidying up exercise of the earmarked reserves. We had a number of redundant ones where balances have remained unspent. Sometimes it's set aside for a particular project gets completed and there's a residue in there. And it doesn't just automatically go back into the decision this committee to we returned 80-something thousand in the year for those purposes, and we've been talking about that. We've got another exercise to do on clearing some of those redundant ones, and some of those can be amalgamated with some other existing ones. For example, there's the Woodford Park Leisure Centre reserve of £31,000, which makes no sense to be separate from the Woodford Park Leisure Centre building reserve. We can amalgamate those things, make it simpler, and just tidy those things up. Sorry, that was a bit long.
Questions?
But they've all been answered.
Yes. Very simple. The proposed budget anticipates application of general reserves of 165,841. That's clear, and it's shown in the additional budget papers in the brown figure there, 165,841. How much of that is actually capital expenditure put into earmark reserves, as opposed to just bringing down the general reserve fund balance? Because the point is that you can only use your reserves once to bring the precept down. So what's going to happen next year is, are we going to be in a position to use that sort of level of expenditure to bring the precept down, or is it just that these are one-off allocations to put money into capital projects that we won't be spending next year?
Yeah, so it's a bit of a combination really. So the money invested this year, for example, at 140,000, they're projects that are one-off and won't need doing again for quite a long time. Anticipating that would be a requirement year. That said, what I would like to see, as the auditor commented, is that to build those funds up in those earmarks for these buildings, but not necessarily to that scale. So even projects next year.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you.
Yeah, otherwise I'll go straight to vote, if that's okay. Right, so we've got three recommendations. Can I take them all together?
Sorry,
Sorry.
you just confirm where the recommendations are, which page?
Page 68. I'll take all three together, if that's okay.
Yep.
All those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. Grant applications. I would hope that we've already really debated this quite comprehensively. But does anybody else, have any particular questions or comments, or can we go straight to the recommendation?
On point 16A.
Yes.
Yeah. Fine.
Okay, all those in favour, please show. Very much. Item B. My own personal, and it's down to because my own personal, not sure whether we should be the ones reviewing the fund matter.
Keith, no, this is probably where some of the confusion, anxiety comes from. At the moment, and point 16A, it just seems a bit of an arse that this committee has to consider charitable donations that another committee has considered. And it took me 2.5 hours to go through 5 applications. Now, we have a lot more than this. Everyone's got here all the matrix that we have and the questions that you have to go through. So we do it for these particular charities even I get confused with committees doing which. But you don't do it for planning charities or any other charities. And I suppose really you said that it should go back to that committee. But I don't think that committee is that sure. I don't think this committee is that sure. And I wonder if we should, and I was going to put this down as future agenda items, but I've got a feeling we're going to be at the end of the meeting. And I think as a council, we should have dare I say, a working group to look at charitable donations and community donations. And I hope that working group would come out that we should have a separate committee of dedicated councillors from all the different committees that actually have one standard approach to reviewing and considering charitable donations. So you've got a core experience of people that know exactly where they're going from and not grading things and looking at documents and having to save them and send them back and all sorts of things, and got a clear set of instructions, not guidelines, because guidelines can be bent and do anything you like to them, but a clear set of instructions to follow, because we are giving considerable sums of money to very important charities, but some people might think they might not be as important as others. So I'm just going to throw that out there and sit back.
That's a proper question. So, was all 10 members of leisure services asked to do this?
Yes.
But for most of the charities, there are only Danny, Robert, Mike and Darren did it.
Yeah, I can understand why. It took me and George, my 18-year-old son.
I did two, but not.
We took 2.5 hours to go through it. Because it was a pain in the arse, it really was. And then you think, oh, so, and these other I don't know, I can't speak for them, but whether they came up with the same conclusion. So we all research, well, one hopes we all research and look into what the charities are for, and go by. But I mean, one of the questions here, for example, let's find it, for example, assist young people in gaining employment, education or training. So Danny put naught, I put yes, Mike put naught, and Darren put naught. No, in other words. So, but it depends on how you read the question. Any help could assist you in gaining employment.
Well, why don't we ask each grant applicant to complete a form that asks each of these questions, explain how this grant will enable you to assist young people, will enable you to, and then they will just write in that box.
This is why they even work.
Hang on, decide.
Is that what they did?
So the form does ask those questions for youth grants. 4 of these applicants came in as annual grants.
So they didn't.
So they didn't complete the form.
And planning and community decided from the budgeting process, didn't have the money to afford it, but because they were to do with youth organisations, they directed it to leisure services to consider. The other thing,
specifically answer that question, make it a lot easier to give them a rating on their answer.
The other thing just on this kind of uncertainty is obviously originally that money was set aside to provide a youth service under an SLA. Under an SLA, Strategy Resources would be the ones who'd have to approve that, albeit leisure services would recommend that. Now, because that youth service SLA wasn't going to be reached, as it happened in the previous year, and money had to go back into the general reserve, the decision was taken to ring fence that money from this year into an earmark reserve for the use of grants. It was a one-off decision at that point in time for this year's money to put there. So this is at the moment a one-off process. When that 30,000 is gone, that is done. And obviously, because originally the SLA would have had to have been approved by this committee, the youth grant process had always been that leisure services would create the guidelines and recommend for SNR, and SNR approved those. And it was also recommended that leisure services would recommend the grants, but Strategy Resources would approve them. Very different to the planning grants, which are bigger, which have always gone through the budget setting process and no questions have happened. But because this sits under what would normally have been a youth service SLA funding, that's why this level of things coming to SNR as opposed to being left with leisure services. And just finally on that, we've now spent just over £25,000 of that £30,000 budget. So there is only £4,290 left in that budget. Once that's spent, unless another decision is made next year to transfer next year's funds into a similar pot, this process will not happen again.
Sorry. The budget gives another 35,000 for this next year.
But that's not for youth grants, that's for youth, that's the youth service SLA. So if that isn't going to be, if that isn't going to spend.
Can I cut right across off this? Because we are beginning to run out of time.
But you can see why we need a little subcommittee, because of all these different things.
You've seen through all the relevant committees. You've heard what we've said today. Can you guys come up with a proposal to streamline things? I'm actually quite a supporter of Mike's idea of if we are the money men, or ladies, sorry, if we're the money committee, then why don't we do the whole lot rather than engaging 2 other committees spending a lot of time. Personally, get it personal, I'm not a great fan of these marking regime on the basis of the fact that we're not consistent. So your view of what, how good somebody is might be different to mine, different to Alison's, etc. And so how do you actually get that right grading? And it can give you a false. But can you come up with something? And I think that the objective has to be to streamline the process.
Yes.
Make everything absolutely crystal clear. Is that a fair?
Yeah.
I really like the answering each question as matrix. I understand to look time. Would it be possible for an officer to present you with the yes or no on all of those things, and then you just consider it from there?
They have done to some extent. There are filters that come before the committee members.
So when the guidelines were approved, this committee asked for a matrix to be provided so that were decisions to go against committees, there'd be something to against an application, there'd be something to have a mark against. And all the points in there are literally the points included in the guidelines. It is subjective, as almost any grant application against guidelines are. Is that application worth the grant or not? So there is subjectivity. The idea was that as a committee, then they would come to consensus. So it's difficult for officers to do this with subjectivity, but we'll review it. And
I'd be happy for that. I'd be happy to come to this committee if this committee met separately just to discuss these items. So they're given the time and relevant.
Well, I'm looking around whether other people are happy to have an extraordinary SR just for this. Yeah. I know everybody's got busy
What
schedules.
time of year would that need to be?
Well,
Well, they're not going to do that report.
yeah.
4 weeks at least. We longer.
yes, and obviously the grants. Those grants have all been approved for next year, other than any leftover news month, everybody can wait. So we'll see what comes in. If anything comes in, then it will become more urgent. But at this moment in time, the annual grants have been agreed, these grants have been agreed. So until something else comes in, we've got a little bit of leeway to look at it. So all of it, and if we have an extra meeting, we'll slot it in there.
Yeah, so let's get the proposal and then work out, because we could potentially do it on Teams. I know you can't make decisions on Teams, but at least we can get a conversation going on Teams.
Yeah, well, let's see.
See what you can do.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, Weevil Park, page 76.
Yes, so this is with regard to obviously Weevil Park. Leisure Services Committee previously requested that the council inquire as to the possibility of a transfer of the land from Reading Borough Council to the Town Council. That request was made, and the answer was no. There's no benefit to Reading Borough Council for it to do so. The Leisure Services Committee expressed a desire to improve the play equipment at the site, and that's discussed a couple of times. The question of whether funds should be allocated to the project at the site when the council didn't own it was raised, and this committee is asked rather to consider whether it consider in principle the allocation of funding for that purpose. For some context, the equipment, although perhaps somewhat limited and older equipment, it is not unsafe, and there are no plans to remove any of the equipment. And that equipment was installed by this town council using some Section 106 money quite a few years back. Just going back, sorry, to the Reading Borough Council correspondence, what they had offered was the council may wish to inquire about a longer lease, but will consider a transfer.
Hypothetical question. If it was hand back to Reading Borough Council, they would have to have the responsibility to maintain it. So for them to say it's no benefit to them, of course there's a benefit to them. It's the benefit in not having to upkeep and maintain and manage Weevil Park on an annual basis. So
there is a benefit to them, in fact, in that there are still Reading Borough Council tenants in that area There are, because
A lot.
there are, well, I don't know, a lot, I don't know, but I know there are still houses, that are still Reading Borough Council hasn't stopped there, the RBC has gone towards the area and, you know, maintains the houses. So slightly surprised that if there's no benefit, well, to see they're saying there's no benefit for them giving it to us. But because if you go around that area, Mike, you will see there are Reading Borough Council signs saying no ball games in the park, in the garage area. Because it is their land.
It is their land, so.
Yeah, but they might say though, if we didn't pay them their £206, they'd have to come and mow it
That's right.
and paint it.
And do all the things that.
Well,
it would cost- it would cost them
go out
money.
every week and inspect the playground and make sure it's there.
So there is a cost.
Yeah, I think that the benefit to them, what they were looking at is in spending money on the play area as opposed to the benefit of us continuing with the lease, which is a different thing. It wasn't presented in a, we want to relinquish the lease if you don't do it.
My own personal view is we shouldn't be, if it was WBC, I'd be saying exactly the same thing. We should not be investing any money from Woodley Town Council taxpayers into things that we don't own. I'm quite happy mowing the lawn, that is a relatively low cost, making sure it's always roster compliant, which we do, is again the right thing to do. But to replace the equipment, no, that's my own view. If Reading wants to do it, you know, if residents there want it,
They do.
Reading to have to do it.
Well, local residents do want improved play facilities for our children, our Woodley Town
Yeah.
children who live in that area.
Somebody
They go quite a way to another play area, if you think about where it.
somebody was keen, was it Hester talking about it? He was talking about it. And I think there's a misunderstanding that it's not a Woodley Town Council facility. You know, the council provided stuff in the past. So I'm with Keith on this, but then if we're not going to put money in equipment, then why are we paying to rent it? Should we then not say, right, we will not renew the lease at 2031 and hand it back, and we'll spend that £200 on something here, or at Loddon Mead, or Rivermead Park. Rivermead Road we don't own either, do we?
We do actually.
We do own it, so we could spend that, we could put something in Rivermead Road, nothing there.
They don't want, listen to what.
But children who live
Anyway.
on Weevil Manor Bruce, they can't, you know, walk to play in Malone, can they? And they are crossing busy roads to get to Woodford Park, where a Woodford Park, that way, amazing play area, isn't a very long way for them, but I doubt anybody's going
But then
to want
if
their
it-
child to.
But if it's not our land, it's not our responsibility to provide it, is it?
I think we've all got an aspiration of, you know, enabling our children to have Weevil Park is completely enclosed by houses. It's a very safe space. You know, you could send your children to play there, that's across the road, which is the most important thing. You very rarely see any children playing out these days, do you? And that's not because of strange danger, that's because of all the traffic these days, you know, from when we were children, yeah. So, I mean, I think Weevil Park it's a boring place to go play at the moment, and it's very
ours, I'd say chuck 30, 50 grand in it and make it really nice.
So,
but it's not.
question for you, Alison. Which.
Well, I raised the question in the first place about could we own it,
Yeah,
but we
but
can't.
we can't. We're looking at, say, 30,000, we're looking. What capital programme of 30,000 you're not going to do? Not you personally, I mean, it's something to think about that you're not going to do something that really will say, thank you very much. As long as you do it, I'm never going to have to do it. It's fun there.
But they aren't.
What
Well,
would-
until 2031, when the lease runs out, Reading wouldn't do something there, and I doubt they would do anything in 2032 if we gave up the lease. Well, because how would they justify that to the Reading Council residents,
you
spending
could-
money in Woodley?
You could give the lease up now, couldn't you? You could serve notice that you're giving it up.
There will be a clause in there to that effect, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Have to review the lease.
But again, another example, what would we do if Woking Borough Council said, and I know they're doing it, but we're not going to renew the play area in Ashenbury, which is a key
We don't.
area. No, but that's the point. We don't own it, but they could turn around and say,
Yeah.
they could say to us, we want you to pay for it.
But half the residents of Woodley think we do own it.
But there isn't any other park apart from Wiggle that we maintain without owning, is there?
Used to be Malone.
Malone historically, but that was transferred to Woking Borough Council, but for much open space, so we mowed the grass, but it's a much simpler prospect if they pay for them.
So as it stands, Wiggle is the only one in this situation.
I just wonder if there's a discussion to be had, councillor to councillor, so that we make contact with the appropriate Reading Borough. Because this decision has come from an officer, hasn't it?
It has, yes.
Without any, I bet it's had no reference to the Borough Council. So I'm just wondering whether we make representations to Reading Borough Council, councillors.
Sounds like a good idea.
Yeah,
Let's see what the Reading Council.
I think there's a moral obligation for us to manage this. Okay,
yes.
it's in my ward, and I know the area well, and I think we should. But I'm with the chairman here. You know, it's not our land, so what are we doing maintaining it? Other than a moral obligation, we've got to get somehow. We've got to push Reading Borough Council to devolve, sell that bit of land, or give it to us for a quid. I mean, it's not worth anything to them.
So if members would like, I can make another approach on that basis.
Could you do that? Yeah.
How long would a lease be? If you renewed the lease in 2031, how long would it be for normally?
Yeah, that was a 30-year lease.
So if it's 200 and something pound a year, £6,000, if you said to them, right, we'll buy it for you for the next, whatever you're going to pay for the next 30 years, say it's £6,000,
Yeah.
that is the value of money we'll give you to buy it and have the land transferred.
Yeah, could you look at the example of Sunningdale Park, which was owned by Reading Borough Council, is fully maintained by Early Town Council. We've seen the amount of investment they've got in there. But I think that some agreement was come to and it moved over.
So I can find out.
Yeah, talk to your office number alone.
Right, so,
Good.
moving on, there's two recommendations, those are the contents, that's easy. So if I get this right, we're not accepting supporting investing, but further communication with Reading Borough Council. Right, all those in favour of, thank you.
Look, sorry, so the second one, we're not voting on as it's written.
No.
We're asking Kevin to take it
We're
back.
voting on the request for Kevin to get direct contact with the leader of the council.
Yeah.
And ask the same question. Okay. Climate emergency action plan, no update? Oh, the condition for this. Approving.
Just to clarify on that, the amount was incorrectly stated in the agenda as 31,169 in the reserve, not 3,169.
Do we need to debate that? I think it's sensible. All those in favour, please show. Good. 19, climate emergency action plan, there is no update, so we suggest we move on. Future agenda items. I'm scratching his head to think of something.
I'm just thinking about the climate emergency action plan. I think to say that there's been no progress, there has been progress because the annual town meeting working group has decided that the next annual town meeting will focus on the climate emergency, and we're going to be dedicating a whole meeting to climate emergency with a whole day exhibition in the Oakwood Centre, We're going to invite residents, we're going, so to say there's been no action, there's been actually quite a bit of action. And I wouldn't want, when this comes up at the full council meeting, for other members to.
Yes, so for the subcommittee reports to full council.
Yes.
So the report from the meeting will go to full council for full council consent. This is specifically to do with the action plan that we get produced for each strategy resources meeting, which states these are our actions and these are our updates from that. There was no update to that action plan, so this is a slightly different matter. But we are doing some work on climate emergency, quite a lot of work through the annual town meeting subcommittee as well. So we're going to be looking to provide an almost a complete overhaul of the way we're managing it at a future meeting of this committee. So there is stuff that's happening.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that okay with you, Mark?
Sorry, Keith, do you mind if I just go back to Weevil Park and just say, on that second recommendation, rather than say we don't support investing, can we say something like, we're minded to support investing equipment, replacement equipment, subject to a positive outcome with Reading Borough Council, rather than just dismiss it.
I don't think we were discussing it. I think we were referring it back for further investigation before we could
We just
properly
didn't vote
consider
on that, the recommendation we voted was to ask for further investigation.
Yes.
So it's not making a statement that we don't support it, it's also not making a statement.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm satisfied.
Last one, 21, publishing website. Anything?
I think just to know the improved subject.
Well done. I don't know who's done it. You did a really good job. Excellent.
Matthew,
Well taken. Well done, Matthew.
Fantastic.
that's why you haven't got all these reports, to be busy playing
What?
Will we be publicising the youth grant
Yes.
applications, which are now
We
approved?
normally do publicise grants once they've been approved. So yes.
Right, thank you, it's been a long meeting, we've covered a lot of ground, we've done a lot of debating and discussing, which is what this is all about, so thank you.
Thank you, Keith. You made a very dull 2 hours very interesting.